Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching the John Woodard Show.
My style is to not be here and analyze the news. Mine is to get out and talk to people in the news. When we tell people something that we know it to be truthful to the best extent possible, finding out what's really going on at the point where it all begins. There is so much in politics that people just don't talk about. I want to get out there and find out.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is John Woodard of the John Woodard Show. We are pleased to have with us again today Sloan Rachmuth, the president of the Education First Alliance, who's been pushing back extremely hard against critical race theory in North Carolina. We interviewed her previously. We've been to several events together, and hopefully now events have transpired. She'll be able to update us on where the effort stands. Sloan, how are you this morning?
Doing great. Thank you very much for having me, John.
It's my pleasure, indeed. You've been sending out some emails about the Department of Public Instruction and what they're doing. Tell us what you're finding, what you're hearing.
We started our group January 6th, and we're in 22 states, actually, in the union. But in North Carolina, we started fighting it on the local level, going to school board meetings, empowering parents to go to school board meetings. When we're asking questions of the school board and we're asking questions of the superintendents, that they were telling us, hey, we don't have a choice for A, B, and C, right? It comes from the state level. And so when we began looking around at the state level, we found indeed that the state level, for instance, the DPI is responsible for teacher training. The general statutes provide that the State Board of Education and the DPI are responsible for updating the curriculum, as we learned from the social studies curriculum update. They're responsible for the teaching material that goes for that. They're responsible for the EOGs. And so people don't realize, John, public education system starts really at the legislature, of course, on the most important branch, but it also is the DPI, which sends out all the funds and trains the teachers.
They were going to be getting a substantial sum of money. They were at least requesting here recently. And you sent out an email about that, and I blasted it around all over the place. Whatever transpired with that?
Well, yes. I mean, I think you're talking about there's a block grant. So there's a block grant given to all states and all public school systems around the country during COVID, right? I believe the initial block grant went out in April of last year. And so that, a year ago. So in order to qualify for the release of the rest of the money that's been committed to North Carolina schools, the DPI needed to write a grant to say, hey, here's what the money's going to be used for, right? So the latest grant, you guys, it came out, the actual draft of the grant application, it was released from the DPI on May 3rd, I believe, May of this year. And we've got a 1-month comment period to push back on what's in there. Let me tell you what's in there. It's about let me see, the exact amount would be $648,000 in there for something called culturally relevant teacher training. Culturally relevant teacher training means critical race theory. And again, I want to impress upon this. When you're at the state level and you're training teachers all over the state to teach critical race theory, you tell me how we as citizens on the ground can fight back against that.
That's what we've been talking about from the very beginning. I know a lot of people have put together these training programs and so forth. What kind of feedback are you getting from the population in the state?
From our training programs, or
yes,
from the teachers,
and from the ones that are being performed by ordinary citizens that are banding together.
Oh wow! I mean, it's been incredible. I mean, we run these parent boot camps. We also train our members to run them as well. I mean, first of all, we teach parents and citizens, what are your rights? And so right there, and a light bulb goes off in everybody at that moment, because most people realize their rights are being violated in the following ways. Surveys, a lot of surveys collecting personal data about students and about their parents kind of turning them into spies. These surveys are being done without parental, input. So that is a violation. Also the violation about being racially stereotyped. That is a violation of law. That is happening all day, every day in many schools across the state. Scapegoating. In other words, making children feel guilty about their race and making children feel guilty for things that have been done 400 years ago. Collective punishment is another thing. I mean, critical race theory, John, in our schools is a system of reparations and of repression. That is what's happening. And it's wrong. It's called by many names, but that's how it's being acted upon within the confines of the schools.
Well, these people are, the left is very cautious about how they label things, and they're very creative. So when you hear terms like equity, that doesn't sound threatening until you find out what that word really means. Kind of reminds me of when Barack Obama said that when he was elected, that in 5 days he was going to fundamentally transform the United States of America. Well, everybody around said, yeah, that's great. 'Cause they didn't know what those words meant. And so now they're finding out what was meant by those words. And Hillary Clinton was going to be the standard bearer after Obama. She got defeated. Now they have defeated Trump, and they've got their new man in there. And he's trying to not only change the schools, but every aspect of American life. So where are you with legal actions that you have been telling me about?
To bring suit against schools, as you know, it can be difficult. And so we're looking at a couple of angles. One is compelled speech. We have teachers all across the state that are forced to write basically a confessional to keep their jobs. So in other words, I'm a white supremacist, I will reform myself, etc. They're having to do that. So that's one angle we're taking. Another angle is surveys. I mean, again, a lot of parents are finding out that their, fifth graders are having to take surveys and reveal, are you pansexual? Are you transgender, etc. Things like that, which are inappropriate and age inappropriate and ridiculous questions that children are being compelled to write. So we're looking at those two angles. We're also looking at the issue of vaccinations. We're having a hard time trying to assuage our parents that their children aren't going to have to be vaccinated without them knowing about it. I mean, look, if you watched Tucker Carlson last night, you know that, it's chilling what's happening. Young men, young children who don't need the vaccination, are being given these vaccinations in Israel to attend school, and they're having this inflamed heart syndrome. So it's deleterious, we know, for this to happen. And we've heard cases, you've heard cases, you've read the news in North Carolina where vaccinations are being pushed in the public schools, which is inappropriate. And then children, in some cases, is what I'm hearing for the news, have been actually taken off site in a bus to go get vaccinations without their parental consent. So the bottom line is that parents' rights are being eroded and robbed. Right. And we've got to take it back. We've got to take back. These are our schools. These are public servants that are running the schools, and they need to know and understand and accept that. So we're dedicated to teaching parents to assert their rights and step into their role as guardians of the public schools.
Where they're headed with these vaccinations is the digital health passport. I just wrote an article that was published about a week ago dealing with that and dealing with the issue of where all of these fundamental changes are originating and who's really pushing the buttons. I don't think anybody truly believes that Obama is not the person behind the scenes right now, but he's getting his marching orders from people in Europe. And Joe Biden, with his connections to the Communist Chinese Party, he's following their directions. And the people of the United States have a lot of problems coming their way. I just don't know where it's going to lead to. But some people have suggested that there's going to be a civil war or a race war in this country before it's over with. White people are just not going to sit back forever and let racism shoved down their throat indefinitely. And you came down to New Bern for that meeting that I organized. You're coming back again. Where are you speaking around the state, and what kind of reception are you getting?
Well, I mean, the reception's been great. I mean, we have, most of the time about 100 concerned citizens, parents, and teachers who need their voices elevated. And again, I mean, we all have to work together, right? But we have to have institutional knowledge, and that's what we're here for, is to provide best practices that we've seen that works. We do investigative journalism. That is the linchpin of what we do. We're very much in favor of putting primary documents in the hands of the ordinary citizen and explaining it to them. They don't, a lot of us, I mean, we're busy, we're working, right? We don't understand that. So what we do is we go through documents of information on the DPI to say, hey, here's the documents. And us, we hold people accountable, and we teach others how to hold people accountable. I mean, our groups now are writing FOIA requests all over the state to find out how their district works, how their schools work, because again, that's our schools, right? So we have to understand how it works. And so that we're big about, not only putting information in the hands of parents, but teaching them how to get the information for themselves. So to answer your question, I mean, the workshops are going great, extremely well attended. We're not able to keep up with demand, and we're growing faster really than we can accommodate.
Generally speaking, you sort of have the sense that the majority of parents, if not most of the parents, are behind the attempt to eliminate critical race theory, but parents are very reticent to speak out of fear of retribution. Are you seeing that?
I mean, I'm seeing some of it is lessening, because again, once a lot of parents learn their rights, learn how to stand up, learn what's going to happen, and again, join with others. I mean, we have 30,000, maybe even more than that, 30,000, a network of 30,000 people, which, John, includes you happily, that will defend and stand behind our parents. Knowing that they're supported means everything. So we're seeing a lot more of that standing up, and we're going to see a ton more. We're also going to see people get very involved in elections. So running for school board, holding legislators accountable. I mean, we've got a bill right now, John, sitting in the Senate. It's HB 324 that Phil Berger has not brought up for a vote. Now, it'll pass the Senate overwhelmingly. But again, we're keeping an eye on, is Apple pulling the strings for legislators? Is Google, now that they're here, or Amazon or Nike that's coming? We need to hold our elected officials accountable for protecting the citizens. We will not be left alone to languish without help from our elected officials.
Not too long ago, you contacted the sponsors of one of the political leaders in our state and complained to them about the inaction of this legislator. Have you just thought about doing that again?
I'll call anyone accountable that needs to be held accountable. They need to remember, our elected officials need to remember, they work for us. They work for us. They're sent there to do a job. And look, just as with any employer-employee relationship, if someone's not doing their job, you need to call it out. Now, I have called out elected officials, and they're remarkably thin-skinned. And, they believe that because I'm a registered Republican, that I should sit on my hands if somebody has an R behind their name. That's not going to happen. Those days are gone. We're about to lose our country here. And I would also argue that we wouldn't be in the mess we're in if Republicans went up there and did the job that they promised they would do and that they were supposed to do. Look, Tim Moore wouldn't bring up for a vote the Women in Sports Act.
That's what I was referring to.
Well, yeah. I mean, okay. And so I put pressure on him to do 324. Well, wonderful. And now it's time for us to turn our attention to Phil Berger. Where is 324? Get it passed now. Get every one of our elected officials needs to be on the record. Are you for critical race theory, or are you against it? We need to know.
The talk is that no matter what we do, we don't have a veto-proof majority. So Cooper's going to veto it, but you still have to stand on your principles, and this is what we're going to do. And if he wants to take the political heat for denying the parents of North Carolina the opportunity to defend their children, let him sing to that tune.
This is not political games. This is get the job done. And I'm telling you, if we do not get Republican senators on the record for pushing this bill, it's going to be very hard for my organization to support them, period. That's what I said before. That's what I'm saying now. If that bill is not brought up, it will be impossible for us to support them. Again, we have 33 chapters now. Flash forward to 2022, we're going to have 100, right? And we're going to have, at least 1,000 in each one of those chapters. So it's not too hard to figure out what the math is. If you cannot get the only conservative group for education in North Carolina behind you as a candidate, you're going to have a long road ahead of you. We're also, very friendly with some PACs who have come out and who have existed, who really want to get more involved in learning about the issues and supporting candidates who will only defend against critical race theory, right? And to primary those candidates who are not, and they're serious about it.
Well, you're doing a yeoman's job, Sloan, and despite uncertainty of retribution against children and parents. Watching TV this morning, there was a woman in Loudoun County that stood there and said, you work for us, we don't work for you, really calling down the Board of Education in her county. And it's going to take a Herculean effort, but you're doing all the front end work, and it's amazing that you and your team are able to accomplish so much.
Thank you.
You're going to be down on the 15th, and I'll look forward to seeing you at that meeting. And is there anything else that I haven't asked you about that you think is germane to this discussion?
Well, I think we covered it all. I would invite all of your listeners today, or your viewers, to go to edfirstnc.org, edfirstnc.org. John, I haven't had my coffee this morning. So I want to go there. And the reason is we've got a lot of documents up there, a lot of investigative reports. Sign up for our newsletter. Stay informed and get involved.
Thank you very much for letting us interview you this morning. Keep up the good work, honey. You're doing a wonderful job, and you and your team are to be commended. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Have a great afternoon.